Happy Victoria Day, everybody! And a particularly happy Victoria Day to my favorite Victoria, British Columbia-based indie devs, Gaslamp Games, developers of my favorite early access Victorian-era alternate history steampunk eldritch horror colony management game, Clockwork Empires, a game which has just entered beta. I'm calling this one probably more than you wanted to know about Clockwork Empires. So, happy Victorian-era Victoria Day, Victoria, BC. Victoria. So just what is Clockwork Empires? Well, Clockwork Empires is an upcoming video game by indie developers Gaslamp Games. Their previous release, Dungeons of Dreadmore, is widely considered an early gem amongst the contemporary crop of turn-based and roguelike games. What kind of game is Clockwork Empires? Well, it's a single-player colony-building simulation game set in an alternate history Victorian-era British colony. Mechanically, it's roughly analogous to games like Anno, RimWorld, and Dwarf Fortress, production, colonist, and resource management amidst internal problems like strikes and starvation, and external problems like bandit raids and giant beetle rampages. I say alternate history, but fond cartoon might be a more precise descriptor. It's got all your favorite Victorian things: redcoats, waxed mustaches, improbable compound names, sharply divided social classes, tinned meats, daring do, gentlemen scientists, and a love of all things brass. The titular Clockwork Empire stands in for Britain, and the official religion of said empire is the Church of the Holy Cog. Rival empires include the République Mécanique, the Stalmark, and the Novorus, who are roughly equivalent to period France, Prussia, and Russia, respectively. Anytime someone talks about brass, clockwork, and Britain, the conversation will inevitably tend towards steampunk, and this one is no exception. Clockwork Empires embraces all of the hallmarks of the genre. Your colonists and all their airdrop supplies are delivered via airship. Once your struggling colony is up and running, a fully equipped metalworks facility can produce a complex array of metal goods and machinery. Concept art of things not yet in the game include tantalizing glimpses of things like Clockwork Knight power armor and quote-unquote minim turrets. In-game, it's possible to construct fantastic modules like steam distributors and vacuum chambers. For now, only some of those are functional rather than decorative, but dynamics and conduits are being worked on as we speak. Inhabitants of the colonies also have to worry about Lovecraft-tinged eldritch horror, in addition to more conventional threats like bandit raids, vermin, and predation from the local fauna. Some of your earliest local encounters will be with the indigenous fish people. If things go especially badly, some of your colonists may actually join their number. Mysterious whispers from beyond the ken of mortal men also plague your citizens, and these can lead to the formation of star-worshipping cults in your ranks. Colonists who die in a violent fashion, i.e. colonists who die, will return as specters to berate their former colleagues about the disposition of their corpses. All of these pale compared to the ominous and enigmatic Obeliskians, stony obsidian creatures who seem to operate for their own inscrutable motivations. Clockwork Empires also keeps things lively with random events and decision trees. There are no clear-cut good or bad policy decisions, just the cold calculus of necessity. If you're not ready for open warfare with the fish people, you may have to grin and bear it when they trample your crops. Your managerial cowardice will displease the more militant-minded amongst your colonists, and that will in turn foment dissatisfaction, to say nothing of the dent in your food production. At its heart, Clockwork Empires is a game about work crew and production chain management. You can pause and unpause the simulation at any time, but you'll never directly control any of your hapless colonists. Rather, you'll set out things for them to do, and they'll act as your hands and eyes. Want to keep your colonists fed? Designate a plot for a farm, assign a crew, and let your colonists till, tend, and harvest the crop. Extra points for cooking the raw ingredients and not making your starving workers eat raw chilies. Simple. How about some guns for your stalwart soldiers? That's a little more complicated. You're going to get a crew chopping down trees for timber, which you'll send to the carpentry to be processed into planks. You're also going to need iron, which you'll obtain by either quarrying surface deposits or mine out of the earth. That goes to the metalworks, which smelts the raw ore and forms it into metal components. Next, a metalworker assembles the various wood and metal parts at a workbench, and we have one pistol. That's all well and good, but here's where it gets complicated. To do any of that, you need to have built the carpentry and assembled the workbenches that turn logs into planks. You'll also need to have constructed the metalworks, built the smelting ovens that refine ore into ingots, built the workbench that turns ingots into components, and built the smithing forge that turns components, ingots, and planks into guns, all of which requires bricks, stone blocks, timber, and planks, and labor. And that's still glossing over building a mine shaft, hauling everything back into town, and hoping nobody starves, goes on strike, runs out of resources, or gets murdered by obeliskins in the meantime. Life in the colonies is harsh, so you'd better be a good manager. What I'm getting at here is that Clockwork Empires is a game that encourages you to consider production and manufacturing chains. Foraging up raw materials is only the first step. Like real-life civilization, you need tools to build more complex tools, and in this case, tools can mean both workshops and the things they produce. On top of that, you need the labor and thus the goodwill of the loyal citizenry to make it all go. So you'd better have food and bed and decorative rugs to keep them happy. Those things in turn necessitate more labor, raw materials, and production, and suddenly you're worrying about things like infrastructure and working conditions. You can't just ship civilization in a box. Progress is an inherently iterative process beset on all sides by fish monsters and tentacled abominations. I believe that is a direct quote from former Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. So that's a super general overview of the setting and gameplay of Clockwork Empires. There are many aspects of the game not covered here, and some of those will probably be fodder for future videos. They include diplomatic relations with other factions, colonist personalities and the attendant personality conflicts, work crew management, foreign trade, madness, insanity, cannibalism, and landscape and biome generation. Although if the last two interest you, I've actually covered those in some detail in this other video. I hope I've given you a good general idea what Clockwork Empires is about and what kind of game it is. If it tickles your fancy, it's just entered beta and is available in early access form through Steam, the Humble Store, and Gaslamp Games' own website. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video and you're interested in more, feel free to stick around, there's more on the way. Regardless, thanks for watching. My name is Alfred, and this has been probably more than you wanted to know about Clockwork Empires.